Yeah, the thing should we like start with the 10-minute and then he's setting up the like a live stream, right?
Live stream, yeah.
Okay. Is 10 minutes okay to start, or do you want shorter ones while he's setting?
Shorter ones would be good.
I feel like some shorter ones.
Yeah, I'm pretty rusty, so
Totally.
I think we all
2
need
minutes
warm
or
ups.
5 minutes.
Maybe 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Sure.
Let's just fire them
yeah,
off.
since this
Yes,
is small,
you guys
yeah.
tell me, and then because he's setting up. And then...
Okay, should we maybe set a timer?
Who's the
Oh,
time
I
master?
can time it too.
Oh,
Okay.
groovy.
Yes, easy.
Thank you.
Actually, can I tell you something?
You still work.
We've got an egg timer since the last time we did this.
Oh, do you now?
Oh, it's a ladybug.
Very nice.
Here, shorter poses that I can. 2 minutes.
Let me know if I'm encroaching.
This is just like video staring at me right now. It's super awkward.
Just have to switch positions real quick. This chair is not my friend.
The tires feel a little old for the
It might be sought after, but it's not good.
So many things.
Like so many things.
Welcome to the Rumble House. Much sought after, but not good Rumble House.
I want to put that on a cross stitch.
Actually, much so.
Said Rich Taylor. That's not much sought after. Okay.
Marie Kondo.
So something that didn't save me time was not sending the link to the figure drawing page. And it might be super glitchy, so you're gonna have to watch it. I can't even find the figure drawing page. Do you remember where it was?
The timer's going, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Definitely.
Yeah, sorry.
There we go. Remember the old days? I'm okay. I would inevitably be power tools in the back. Oh, I know why that was so slow. I was broadcasting off the guest.
A minute. Always memories of coming back here now. With the fly, and do you remember when we had like the fly paper hanging over where the model was sitting? Just, like, trying to not let it up.
How long has been with us?
Just about 9 years.
Taking a
This December, yeah. What was I? Yeah, so I think December will be 9 years. That's crazy.
I am so sorry to the 3 people watching because I haven't switched the camera over. I was running blind. It's just been my face. I might have even been like making ugly faces. Hey, why isn't it working?
Half an hour, Rich.
Well,
Just my face. Like, welcome.
they can draw your face.
Yeah.
Why is that not? Oh, here we go. Okay, there is a speaker. It's a default speaker, so it's not going to be the best audio for anybody that's joining us.
Do you want to do another 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Or another 5 minutes?
Do a bit.
Yeah, we know what.
Yeah, sure.
5? Okay. This is like build your own figure
We have 10 years of experience doing this,
drawing. Yeah, it's
and
5 minutes.
It's been a couple of years though.
it has.
Yes.
And they were the worst years. This was a couple of the worst years ever.
What? No.
I keep trying to explain to
Humanity tested.
keep trying to explain to the people I work with that there's all these teachers at my school, and everybody's got PTSD, and sometimes they bicker, and it's like, don't you know that we're all coming apart at the seams here? That's if I stepped in your way, I apologize. I will say it's going to take us longer than I anticipated to get started. Have I been stepping in your way quite a bit?
No.
So we kicked around a little bit of discussion about maybe having like a family draw. And I think we're very quickly deciding not to do that, yeah? Maybe on Friday, a different night for
Yeah,
kids.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I feel like just it seems like if anything that would just be more conducive to like a different time of day. This would be like a school night and
Totally.
everything.
Well, just for the summer.
Even then, parents would probably have their kids in like summer camps and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and they'd be away for vacation or something.
The ones that care.
I'm so sorry about that. Here, have that. Oh, this is that's what you want? Okay.
That's about as far as my leg goes. Can all be flexible models.
Do you know all these desks were in Ghostbusters?
Really?
Yeah.
Is that Dan Aykroyd's name carved in?
It was like the kid version of Ghostbusters. I haven't seen it.
Or do you mean like the real Ghostbusters from like the big purple?
The one they just shot in Alberta.
Afterlife.
I was thinking of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Ghostbusters Afterlife.
I cannot say I ever saw the Hanna-Barbera cartoon. I know it existed.
Nothing to do with the Ghostbusters, you know.
I guess it had a couple things.
Made the lighting interesting.
It's very clean. That's what I like about this lighting. Just like this
Yeah,
strong like planes from the drum.
The light is part of a power source for the
Mm.
camera.
Ah,
We
Yeah.
can
that
turn,
would be a bit of an issue.
we can turn
Yeah.
it down maybe, but
Sorry about
yeah, it's your camera, like when you plug it in, it doesn't work on certain ones.
This is way out.
that. Well, I think because really what it comes down to is certainly with our cameras, they want to connect to a computer when we try and charge off a computer.
Mm.
And it does need a certain amount of energy, which is probably more than your cell phone charger.
They make those like battery banks that have like external power, like external wall warts.
Yeah, I have one. I give it to my son.
We should buy another one though.
I'll just get it back. I don't think he's using it. Does anybody want a lamp? BTW?
I'd actually appreciate it, especially for the longer poses.
Yeah, here. I'm just going to push it your way. And get ready in between poses. Set it up. Watch, it might be hot.
Here, you have a little flashlight we should get back out.
Yeah, I had an entire room full that I got from my classroom to that were chargeable. What do you call it?
We plug the sunlight, so
Yeah, solar. And they worked at my old school, so I never thought to check. I got to my new school, ordered a class set, and found out that the building had solar-proof windows, which was annoying. What happened?
how does that even happen?
They put like shading, like polarized shields on the windows to keep the heat out, and it meant I couldn't charge my.
Do you want to wait a bit?
Great.
It works.
Oh, actually, I might grab water and then.
Oh, yeah, sure.
There we go. Oh,
Because I remember we used to give them breaks.
I'm just like, go.
Wasn't that?
I'm always better at thinking
Hardcore.
about other people than myself.
Yeah.
By ear tonight.
Oh, learn read.
I'm gonna need another code, Jesse.
Is it? Did you send it?
I have not sent it yet. It's coming any second.
I'll just start it once I get the code.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna need a code now.
That's right.
Are you sure?
No, I need it. I was lying. I lied to you. Straight up lie.
You're still
What?
You're still 610
610
137.
137.
Okay. We'll go 5 minutes.
I love the story you guys were telling about being rusty. It's not the truth. Ooh, mute.
What do you got for time on this book?
Just under 4 minutes. 3:55.
Counting out?
Counting down.
Okay.
Sorry. Left 3 minutes and 45 seconds left.
I was going to set my lamp up right over my head, and then all of a sudden you just see that weird burning sound and smell. What time is it, Jess? Ish. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Yeah, so until we find our footing, we will probably have to set up closer to 6 than 6:30. gonna just tell you if it so happens that this lamp has a dead bulb, it might have a tantrum. Oh, yeah. That's perfect. Did that screw up anybody's lighting?
Just under a minute left.
Zoom. Also, we might make use of the Artlist account to play music.
Oh yeah. Should we do another 5 or would you like a 10 now?
Maybe another 5 personally, but whichever you guys want.
7.5.
7.5 is pretty oddball.
Do we want to do it for the?
It feels like unexplored territory.
Yeah, now we're gonna get this at Atelier too.
Now, can I just say that we just went online, so let's be super. No, I don't think that's a problem at all. I just if because you won't get 7.5 minutes at Atelier, right? So I just want everybody to be super.
You're just super earnest.
Take that.
And now maybe we can open up the conversation a bit about. I think we're heading towards going back to a proper traditional model,
Yes.
right? And somewhere around.
So 7.5, we're gonna be wild. Am I doing the exact same pose except sitting?
It's free tonight.
I just realized it's like top of my body isn't the exact same.
I have a funny story. I set up everything perfectly except for the camera is exactly in my way. Actually, perfectly is a bit presumptuous.
Got aim for the stars.
Do I have anything else to toggle? Can I toggle that down? I would. Oh, I am so on it. Do you guys do any of this with the lights or the broadcasting or any of that? Because most of my best equipment came from a bike store and a drum shop in terms of like camera equipment and film equipment.
Like cameras to like borrow or
All of our cameras, all of our camera stands are actually bike stands modified with monopods. And my ability to move around and like have an overhead shot and
mic stands are pretty good for that if they're like lightweight cameras, as long as they're not over like a few pounds.
yeah.
And they're like pretty cheap, like $20 each.
Right. That's one of the things I was going to say is that very, very similar setup. The photography stuff is almost always quite a bit more expensive.
It's photography tax, you know.
Photography tax?
Yeah, well, it's almost like medical equipment where it's like no expense spared, but it's like, do you really need this surface to be machined this precisely?
Yeah.
Or are you just inflating the egos of the people buying it?
It's kind of interesting because like there at the very least there's like a lot of lighting. Like I don't know for when you because there's there's a lot of studies being done just about how blue light is basically like okay for you, but it's like certain times of day because like it keeps you awake or whatever. So it's if you look at it in the morning, like supposedly it kind of helps with boost sort of things like that, like a bit of a substitute for the sun. But anyways, so of course there's a bit of a market on these sorts of blue lights for this purpose. But they're like the exact same as like selfie ring lights. And
Right.
so the selfie ring lights are just way cheaper. So in case any of you is looking to get into that sort of game, keep that in mind.
I have a stockpile of selfie ring lights. This one I'm holding together with a clamp.
My mom also uses an old music stand as like her one of her sort of like easels that she works on because depending on what kind of stand it is, they can be sturdy.
Picked up like a lot of like basic carpentry and like jig stuff, like working different jobs the past few years. And it's always fun making something instead of buying it, but sometimes it's not the most efficient thing to do.
What do you get left in this pose, Jesse?
3.5 minutes.
All right, and then here's a question. If I were to feature the camera over your hands while you're drawing, would that be like incentive to, I mean, in return for that, would you be willing to do a free session? So let's say people come in, if you want to sit in hotspot where your drawings are being recorded and going to the YouTube. Oh no, because if we have nudes, we're not going to do this with the camera. Interesting. There's so many layers.
No, it's good to talk.
Well, part of the reason I wanted to get the camera going again was that we could start the conversation about how we're going to do this. And there are two people with us online, which is funny because the first half an hour is just me scowling at the screen. Do you know when you're starting your next post, Jess? Minute left. Can we maybe up the lights a bit?
I'm saying no to that.
Yeah. I didn't need my light for drawing, but I need a little more light for the screen if we're going to have the camera on. So can you put on the
Lights on.
and then wind them up a bit? You're in my chair in fear of the parallax error. Mind your way.
So, 10 minutes?
There, you're sitting
Mm-hmm.
on the green stool.
That's gonna do like ten minutes.
So I'm gonna intrude your space a little bit. Only 3 people here, and I still find a way to block my own view.
Remember where there'd be those nights where there's like 20 people and there'd be like, we'd be like sitting on the floor. I remember those. It was like summer and there'd be like 20 of that. It was really crazy.
I'm sorry. Keep walking in front of you. Just beautiful toes.
Is Randy joining us from the West Coast? I know she was asking about
I don't know who's with us. Is this a comfortable pose?
It's not bad. I should have waited till the blood came into one body parts before I started the next one, but it's not bad. forgot about that.
You're sort of sitting in a manner I would never sit. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying, like,
It's harder to draw when you don't feel it. Like when it's not familiar. Is that
yeah, kind of like how you like sometimes like groan at a sad picture and have kind of a gleeful.
There's like 4 minutes left.
On your next pose, Jess, you know how you kind of readjusted towards where my computer is? Can you start out where you were?
Like facing.
You just shifted sides.
Oh yeah. Back to that side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
more sense.
Do you want me to hold it?
Problems behind the pencil. This is another long one.
Yeah, is it 10 or do you want to do a longer one?
Are you sure I'm not
Running off to the bathroom real quick. So.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
sure.
good.
Do we do a break?
Do you want to do a break now? Yeah, we can do a break. Yeah, for sure. There's only 4 of us. You can take a break whenever you want.
Everybody's at the mercy of my bladder.
Yeah.
Stamina is not.
Hold up,
3 years
everybody.
ago, bladder is coming through. Like, oh, I take
I
a
won't
break.
time your break.
Holding everybody hostage.
The blood can come back into your
Oh,
Oh, was that your camera?
that was my camera.
Oh, I missed something.
It was awesome. Camera's been through tough times.
It's been through pandemic. It's been through
Nosedive.
I like the way fabric.
I know.
It's
I
really.
haven't worn it yet, and I was like, oh, Rich was like, satin shirt.
It's really great.
Thank you.
That was her TEDx shirt.
It was one of the ones I was trying to make a decision on.
Oh yeah,
Who
I
do
saw
I
that.
want to immortalize myself as?
We just got back on Instagram. So I didn't make it. So it looked kind of too fancy for me. It's like, where's my tux?
The TEDx?
Yeah,
No, it's not fancy.
no.
It's fun. I've been like manically checking YouTube because it said 5 to 7 days of post production for the video to go up on YouTube.
Oh,
And it's
cool.
been just about 6. And I'm like every day checking because you know when you do it.
Well, you'll.
I don't know what
put
it sounded
Put it out there for us to know, right? 'Cause
Yeah, I'll definitely share it. But it was like, I was really good because I was like, oh no, it's gonna be forever. Don't even check. Everyone's like, you go. I'm like, I don't know. I was there physically, but not,
oh, I'm sure.
you know. And so I'm like, but I'm excited to.
Oh, I'd really like to see it.
I'll definitely share it. But it's like that's been my like manic hyperfixation lately. Just checking if I got the link in the email, and then I go to the YouTube app, and I Google myself, and then. Yeah, I have.
I don't remember checking for mine, but I must have. What I mean is I don't remember checking for mine, not that I didn't.
No, yeah, I know. I was trying to think that too.
You guys have easels kicking around, right?
Yeah, totally. Do you want Rich? Where is there some in the other room or?
I'm still setting this up.
Here, I can grab them.
That was super cute though. I was just getting set up, and then we took a break.
But then you'd be set up.
No, it's fine. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying like
Yeah.
I shouldn't have set the camera up, but it's actually we do have some people with us, and that's kind of nice.
What's up, people? Thank you for being with us.
Jack, you're on the slippery slope. Becoming an influencer.
Oh God. Oh dear.
I think it's fine. If you want to be an influencer, I think that's great. A tastemaker, though, not welcome here.
Yeah, I only want to influence people into the worst decisions they've ever
Well,
made in their lives.
I think I would say that generally, we're gonna ask me what's the difference. I think I would say an influencer is really not an influencer. They're just somebody that has a following. There's a tastemaker is actually like inspiring people to like a critic, I guess. I still say that with disdain. Actually would love it if there was some critics in the world.
So one is selling, one is inspiring. You think?
One's in promotion, the other one's in judgment. Right? I would think that a tastemaker is there's this video where David Bowie kind of goes off about how Herring and Basquiat were kind of allowed in and at the expense of everyone else. And he wasn't being bitter about it. He was in. But he's like, here's this thing where it's like, we think that the art world's opening up because they've allowed these two graffiti artists in, but they're so carefully guarded. Right. And so, to a lot of extent, it's like, it really is still a matter of maintaining exclusivity. And
A bit of scarcity too, probably, right?
I hope not. Because I painted 1,000 paintings to keep this place open. And if scarcity is the key, then I'm screwed.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the value of your work, it's always been provenance. But in terms of like the your status, it has to do with guarding those gates. Deciding who's in and who's out.
Should we go 10 minutes or 15?
I guess
Is that okay?
I think yes, that'll be fine.
I can also move over.
Actually, I could just link that.
what time is it?
8 o'clock.
Okay. Do you think I could have those washes?
The wash.
What is the plural of wash? Leash.
What time is it now?
It's 8 o'clock.
It's 8 o'clock. Okay, so we could do 3 10s, 2 15s, or 4 15s.
Four.
4:15? Sure. Any? Are you happy either way?
I was thinking with a break for the model.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, that's okay. I'm like I'll
Do you want a
choose.
different chair?
I'll choose
Are you
easier. I'll choose a bit easier ones for the longer ones. Is that okay?
Or we could do like a blitzkrieg for like the last 10, 15.
Sure. Okay, this one will be 15, and we can decide from there. Does that sound good?
Yes.
the first time you wore that shirt?
The tags are so hard.
The huddle camera, the one I dropped. Blinking out a bit. It's the end of the world for the huddle.
We should just rename it the Hubble, and then it'll be like a feature.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. So I've been talking to the physics teacher at my school and the bio teacher about trying to integrate a class on how we see with color theory in context of how the mind makes images. And I keep falling deeper and deeper down the hole. But one of the things that struck me the other day was that because the colors we see are based on us having red, green, blue cones in our eyes, it's highly unlikely if somebody visited from another space, they would have the same cones. They might have 2 arms, 2 legs, 6 arms, 6 legs, but you know, you'd be hoping that they didn't eat us. And they're not going to admire us for the way we handle the planet. They're not going to admire us for how we treat other creatures. But you kind of hope maybe they'd admire us for, you know, a Monet painting. But the Monet painting might not make any sense to them.
What makes you think they can even contextualize things such as admiration? Could just be some sort of goop that doesn't know nothing but just make more goop.
Are we talking about somebody that traveled here? Like,
Oh, I thought you were talking about aliens.
yeah, like if I imagined like aliens coming to visit.
Or they see us as
Oh, they'd see us as goop.
Well, going back
Or if
to
they could get a view of like the cones in our eyes, they'd be like, "These doofuses don't have enough cones.
actually,
Substandard, subpar."
they just
Like when you're sort of dismantling Star Trek and you know, kind of taking it down the path of, hey, how come they all speak English? And then you talk about the universal translator, and then or another example might be like somebody's talking about something fake in a Marvel movie, and yet we're not bothered by the guy sticking to the walls or whatever. Like, let's just hypothetically say, if they had any interest in interacting with us, what I would imagine being is, as our saving grace, would be the arts and music. But I was asking Jess at the same time, well, you know, if we took a dog to a Metallica concert, they're not going to hear what we hear, right? And might be quite painful for them. Or deer. A deer at a Metallica concert would probably suffer quite a bit. So, you know, what we consider music, they might consider torture. And it was just like, I guess it didn't occur to me how limited the class I'm thinking of really. I want to look at how much we take for granted even before we start seeing to paint. that color doesn't exist. It only exists in our heads. So we're going to talk about color theory. We're going to talk about the fact that it doesn't exist.
Interesting.
I actually have an excellent textbook that I absolutely devoured a while ago called Sensation and Perception.
Right?
I
I'll
think
take
it's a fairly popular text, but you can borrow it if you want.
For sure. No, just give me the name and I'll buy a copy.
Because it's exactly about that stuff, and also it might be great. It's like kind of geared towards like college students, but it might be great for like any sort of age group, because there's a lot of like practical like lab experiments
Mm-hmm.
that like demonstrate exactly how like the rods and cones in your eyes work, and sometimes if you like bias it towards seeing like horizontal lines or vertical lines, you can completely miss detail that you would otherwise not miss in images. So.
Yeah, it started with a kid I teach who's a very good painter. And she asked me what she should do next. And I said, how about you consider how light enters your mind? And that sent me on a bit of a path.
Could you imagine asking your teacher in grade 11, you're like good at painting, and like, what should I do next? So you think you're going to be told like reflective surfaces or something?
Well, the kids in my class
No, I like
technically aren't doing work that you would look at if you were a layman. And I put Rembrandt in front of you and Lois's work in front of you. And I asked the social teacher to explain the difference between these pieces. They would think the Rembrandt was darker. You know, they wouldn't have a sense of like, this is a master and this is a student.
I mean, a lot of people just kind of don't know how to comment on anything other than like, oh, I like the colors. I like the colors and it's detailed. That's kind of like 99% of like layman accolades.
And that's kind of back to the topic of what aliens would see. It's like we're kind of alien to ourselves, even in different contexts, if you don't have the language to talk.
Absolutely. So like the kids are like, Mr. Terry, do we all see the same colors? I'm like, well, take your glasses off. You know, like put your friend's glasses on. We don't see the same shapes. Why would we think we see the same colors?
And your eyes are actually just protrusions of your brain. Your eyes are literally just extensions. They're just pieces of your brain sticking out. It's the freakiest thing. Think about it.
Yeah. Or if you think about how the eyes, we assume they're lenses, but they're really more like filters. If you could see the air around you, you'd be blind. So it's what you can't see that matters.
Actually, for the longest time, there's specifically cockatoos, but there were a lot of birds, and they were like, well, how the hell, like scientists for the longest time were like, there's no obvious sexual dimorphism. Like, how the hell do they even make like mating pairs or like assess mates? Because they all like look the same.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out they have like cones and rods that see the ultraviolet spectrum, and they actually have ultraviolet markings all across their fur, and that's how they assess like partners and like gender and stuff.
They'd be way more metal birds if we could see ultraviolet.
Birds are like bird physiology, and also like the way they take in the world is fascinating in itself, because there's no other creature that can like store like just the insane density, just the capacity of information that they can store. It's bonkers. Like,
Or like how a magpie will use tools, but they really don't have a brain stem. So somehow they're using their brain stem to do higher level thoughts.
well, you have synapses and neurons. Like, sure, most of it is in like your spinal cord in your brain, but you have them all throughout your body. So it's not impossible to assume that there is cognition that happens outside of the designated specific central nervous system. Just like a very, actually, if you actually look at like the way like the central nervous system is set up. It's not too unlike like an electronic circuit. You know, there's like comparators and logic gates, and you know, it's just the brain and the spinal cord. That's where they're the most densest, but they kind of go all throughout the body, all the way to individual muscles.
Yeah. So that course I'm trying to build or looking at starting would start with the anthropological history of color. And then it would go to a little bit of sort of biology and cognition. And then in the end, you'd start messing about with colors, but from a completely different perspective, where I guess the starting point, I want to kind of erase the assumption that we can see anything and then kind of work from there. Although, if you really got into the second stage, you might become a bit of a nihilist before you get to the third stage.
Like that's kind of like the old quote, you know, it's kind of naivety to nihilism to wisdom. That's kind of a grand scheme of like a lot of things.
I was also thinking about like how water bear have basically holes instead of eyes, more like pores, but they seem to have red, green, blue color receptors, so they're seeing without the mechanisms of eyes, whereas octopuses have eyes similar to ours, but they're black and white. And so then they speculate, like you're saying, that the octopus has a brain in its limbs, which when we try and interpret that, you wonder, like, well, how does it get anywhere? They must be really in agreement, you know, working together. It's probably more likely that the octopus's brain is managing the body, and that maybe the limbs are in charge of the color changes and the blending into the environment. So they can't even see color, and yet they're perfectly color matching themselves to their environments.
Well, that's one thing they found out, is that like all the cognition that goes behind color matching is completely
Arbitrary. Not arbitrary,
it's completely disconnected from their little donut brains that they have in the center.
right.
You
It's like an impulse.
Donut brain seems like a really good insult. Like that's what an octopus would call another octopus. Like if they were being like,
Fuck you, donut brain.
You're a cephalopod.
See the spine over there talk. Okay, bone rack. No. How are we gonna fight?
Yeah, have you ever watched a octopus like really move?
I got obsessed with octopuses for a little while. Not sure they're real.
I'm not sure anything's real.
But it's like the way they move, it's like oddly like human, like the way they anticipate like the next rock they're gonna grab onto.
Like how they run, or like how they like.
Yeah,
And
I
like
don't know if
you're-
this is a fact or not, because I heard it from a kid, but he was really, really invested in sea creatures. And he told me that octopuses can gain the cognition, roughly the cognition of a 7-year-old child in the year that they're alive. So they only live for a year, but they learn 7 times faster than we do. If they live longer, they'd be smarter than we are. Now, that's the kind of thing sometimes you watch too much YouTube and come up with. So, I do think, like, have you ever eaten an octopus?
Oh yeah,
Do you still eat octopuses?
here and there.
The last time I ate an octopus, I had a really bad feeling that I was doing something I shouldn't be. Like, this feels wrong.
But you know, pigs and cattle are like pigs and cattle and chickens are all actually sweetheart animals, you know. But I eat them.
It's funny. There's a lot of people that wouldn't eat a dog that have bacon every day. You know?
Yeah, that's kind of like it's a weird line to draw. But
I was listening to Conan O'Brien, and he was saying how he likes to think when he eats meat that it was like an evil criminal cow, or, you know. Or
Who's
like
an asshole?
Larceny.
You know,
Everyone's
like-
happier with that.
He only eats like kind of bad animals. You know? So,
Yeah.
whatever works.
That's a nice moment.
we have to play.
Maybe that's why some of like the best stories are just about a guy who like has a vendetta against an animal.
Yeah.
It's like living out that sort of
Yeah, like
Yeah. hmm Yeah, I'm just saying maybe there's a reason he was called Moby Dick. Like
Moby was a dick. Yeah. for
Yeah.
Sure. But
He
his
really
real name
was. big old whale, real mean looking. Like
Well, to be honest, the subtext I got from it was that like Ishmael really had to get a life, man. Dude, you can't be like just going around like
Herman
chasing-
Melville had to get away.
I don't want to be difficult. I think you talked about Captain Ahab needed to get a life. Ishmael was kind of pretty cool, and Melville died before he became famous, so Melville forfeited his life. Ishmael, I thought was pretty awesome, but you're absolutely right.
Maybe I'm getting him confused.
Yeah, so no, I'm not trying to be snobby here. Like I spent 10 years reading the first 30 pages of Moby Dick because I just loved it so much. Every time I basically start it because I wanted to get to the part where he's tipping people's hats off their heads, and I don't know why I love that so much, but I did. And yeah, Ishmael. Call me Ishmael's the narrator, but it was Captain Ahab that really screwed everyone up, and he needed to get a life, right, and a foot. What? Oh, it went off again. I like that you guys are smart and not competitive, because sometimes we could just start like tearing each other apart on details, and I feel bad already for having said that. Oh, Ishmael versus Ahab.
Not at all.
But I got really stressed over Ahab
I like-
because he's kind of
I'm
stupid.
glad you apologized. Otherwise, I would have spent all night just like writhing.
Yeah, like-
how could Rich make me feel like that?
I don't feel like anything. I just like to make jokes.
No, you guys are wicked smart, and it's fun to talk to you.
This
So-
one's 15 minutes. Is that okay?
I think it's because I work with the kind of people that get like super competitive. If they're around other smart people, they want to be the only smart people sometimes.
Yeah, you mean
Teachers.
No, teachers?
That was so great.
Couldn't imagine teachers being competitive.
I hope we're not
Cutting
gonna
each
land
other
in hot
down.
water,
You know,
Rich.
like it's funny because I have a completely different persona at school where it's like deeply threatening to a certain kind of teacher, usually social studies. If I use big words, you know, like they're okay with a art teacher being in the room, but they don't really want you to contribute with the conversation.
Oh, yeah, that's hard.
I got in this like weird thing in high school where like if I really didn't care what the teacher thought,
You'd make
like
sport
as
out
a
of them.
person,
Yeah, yeah.
I just really did not care to apply myself. Especially there was this one teacher we had that was like pregnant like 9 times out of 10. And it's like either she was absent or she was there and pregnant, and by God did everybody know.
There are archetypes.
There's also, unfortunately, kind of a financial advantage to getting all your pregnancies done at once. So, like, I think I'm hearing what you're saying, but there's also like maybe the first time you'd be like going through the phase of I'm the only one that's ever been pregnant before, and then the second time you'd be like I'm the only one that's ever had 2 kids before, and then
I'm the only one that's ever had kids.
Kid.
It feels
I don't know where the hell everybody else came from.
There needs to be a Sigma grind set account, but for pregnant women. like all the best like sort of optimization like financial strategies for like how many kids like in what spacing, like the strategy guys.
Oh yeah, because if there's anything about pregnant women, is that they're always super
We
chill.
are
and they're
online, by the way,
They
guys.
always feel
Hold
like
on, hold
they
on.
always feel like
Yeah.
they've done
Rich
enough.
is Rich is being no.
Because I personally, I've never been pregnant, so I don't have an opinion.
I mean, it's a
I'm with
lot
them.
to. I was.
I'm
I didn't even get to finish
I don't
my.
have an
I
opinion.
didn't
I
even.
also don't have
shouldn't
a
you?
opinion.
This is kangaroo court.
Any of
This is.
I'm still stuck on octopus. Donuts.
Weird.
I
We
think
have
it's
36
donuts.
viewers.
I think we got a few donut brains right here. the way I'm feeling, at least.
You were saying about not wanting to listen to certain teachers, though. That was really interesting. Do you want to tell more of that story, or?
Yeah, no. Well, it was mostly like the classes that had like where they spent the entire class like doing a really long-winded PowerPoint, and then left all the assignment stuff to like do
Right.
at home.
Flip grid, yeah.
Yeah. So if it was like, okay, I'm gonna like do this assignment, just like racking my brain, trying to like appease the teacher.
Yeah.
And it's like I would literally rather do like anything else with my time. Just like I was a champion at like min-maxing my like time for grades. Like my grades weren't great, but like if you looked at the value proposition, it was like if you did like full cost accounting on my grades, then like I was killing it, man.
I spent most of my time kicked out of class. Till I got to hospital where I refused to leave. I just sat there talking.
Hosco.
What's right?
What?
I just sat there talking.
High school.
Oh,
Oh,
high
high
school,
school.
yeah. And then I became a teacher, which is funny. And then there was times when I'd be like teaching classes thinking, how come I don't know any of this? I'm like, wait a minute, I got kicked out that year. For drawing most of the time.
I think that should make you more qualified than anything.
Can I tell you how I learned my math?
Huh?
Can I tell you how I learned my math? I
No.
learned all of my math during the exam through the process of elimination. So if the answer was A and I applied it to the formula, I would have a 10-minute head start than if the answer was D. Because the answer was D for the first question, I was learning how to do that math by post-rationalizing the 4 options I had into that formula. And once I figured that out, I know how to do it. So luckily, the teachers often would hit a lot of A's and B's, but I was teaching myself the math on the exam. And I'd usually get like most of the exam done and a lot of it right. But I always thought I was stupid until I became a teacher and realized, wow, like that was actually, I must have been pretty great.
No, yeah, exactly. Well, that reminds me, like my grandpa, I think he had to do something to like qualify for when he was going to university for English, but he had to get something for math.
Yeah.
And he just kind of, because it was back in that era where it's like the teachers would basically choose like all the answers on the multiple choice. Like they
Right.
had to just kind of put that work in, and so he just guessed them based on like, yeah, we've spiced it up with some of these ones now. Well, now we need to throw in one of these ones for some flavor or whatever.
A and
Create
I haven't
another
had a
rhythm.
D in a while.
That's fair. My uncle Rolly wanted to get his pilot's license, took the course, did all his hours, and then at the end found out he needed to pass an eye exam
Ooh.
in Bonnyville. So turns out the doctor left him alone in the room with the eye chart, and he just memorized the eye chart and
Ah.
got his pilot license. Now he did end up in a storm early on where it turned out that that's where he figured out why he had the eye exam, because he was trying to navigate through the storm without his glasses when they fell off and they got bumped off. I can't remember how the story went, but
Interesting.
it had one of those endings. He's still alive.
One of those endings about like a plane in a storm is a controversial way to frame it.
I was about to
No,
say
I-
he should have got his boating license too.
Was he? Listen, he got the pilot's
The
license,
point-
he
the
got
point of the
boating
story was
license,
is
is
that
he forklift certified?
in some way he paid for faking his eye exam because it worked out that he needed his eyes to survive a storm.
Yeah.
And the rest of the story, I was kind of young when he told me. So.
I always hear people say like, "Oh, you better study" when they're getting like an exam from a doctor as like a joke.
Yeah,
But he'd actually
Yeah.
like that's my Uncle Rolly Jess, right? Have you heard that story before? And he's quite brilliant, but definitely on a different branch of the autism tree than I am. And I think he spent most of his life driving a bus. But he was a teacher at one point. Oh yeah, and he salvaged. Well, he likes to think he salvaged most of the bikes in Bonneville, but I think a lot of them were like just left unlocked for a little while. He's got like 150 bikes in his backyard, stacked up in piles.
I have this deal with my mom. Well, I call it a deal, but pretty much I just insisted and she acquiesced. But yeah, we have this garage that's been like filled with junk for like a decade and a half, and I'm putting all the money and all the work into like clearing it out.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna have like a pretty decent studio space, just kind of or like workshop.
Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I am 21.
Oh, that's awesome. When I was 25, I cleared out half the garage and made a studio. I kind of moved into it too.
You know, I did the whole thing of like getting a real job, so that like gave me like a lot of brownie points.
Yep.
With my family, but now I'm on a sabbatical, so that's pretty awesome.
Can you remind me what your real job is, or do I know?
Yeah, so I was HVAC refrigeration mechanic,
right,
for about 2 years, but now I'm just now I have like a decent chance, and like the timing makes sense, and I'm going to go back to school and get a diploma in mechanical engineering technologies from SAIT.
Right.
So yeah, but that it might be like a year or two before I'm actually like in the course. But you know, I'm just taking my sweet time, keeping my overhead low, and try to
waiting to see what the AI takes out.
the AI takes out.
Yeah. I used to make signs, one of my part-time jobs, and saying this yesterday, if the S fell off a Safeway, we'd rebuild it. The bandsaw. One day I came into work and they said, "Hey, how would you like to try sales?"
About 4 minutes left.
I was like, "Not so much." Then I saw my first computer router table. It was the same table they used for Stargate to make all the Egyptian carvings. But it would just whip through and punch a sign out in 15 minutes, something that used to take me a couple hours.
I tried to do the laser cutting course up at Protospace.
Yeah.
But summer, so like a lot of the courses are pretty like congested and booked up.
Right.
But yeah. But I don't really intend to laser cut anything anytime soon.
A fella gave me a 3D printer not long ago. And I kind of took a look at it and realized I like sculpture. So maybe this isn't for me. But I gave it to another friend who got really excited about it and made some neat stuff. There's like 2 or 3 things that I'd kind of like made for me, but it so happens that they're the only pieces that they don't have the plans for. Like I'd like the Lion Man. They have the Venus of Willendorf and all kinds of art pieces. You can make that skull you were talking about. Get a 3D printer, but they don't have Lion Man.
I wanted to do something with like mold making.
Yeah.
So like 3D printing nowadays, I can make like a bunch of polyurethane casts and then do like a bunch of tests or.
Yeah.
You know. or maybe even sell taxidermy forms if my work's anatomically up to snuff.
I got into the latex latex cast making a little while ago, but I didn't like the fumes of the plastics, and the plastics kind of spoiled it for me. But then I found wax in my art room, and I had never used wax. I hadn't any idea of how to use wax, and it kind of sat there for a few years. And then I heated it up with a hairdryer one day. So I made a basic form by heating it, and then used a pencil to carve into it, kind of halfway between wood and plasticine. Much harder than plasticine and a lot softer than wood. And then I was going to try melting some metal and doing some pours, but I ended up using concrete, and I just love concrete. But if you made like molds and then cast bones out of concrete, that'd be really interesting.
I was thinking of casting bones out of metal.
Yeah.
Because once I have the negative and I make the foam out of it,
Yeah.
that's actually a very common technique, even for like making industrial parts, is doing foam casting in sand.
Yeah.
And I could definitely, I wanted to do some like test casts of like little skull parts or whatever.
Yeah.
Out of like aluminum. Or
Yeah.
whatever, because it's dirt cheap and easy to melt. So, and then maybe get some like artificial like rhinestones and whatever, try to dazzle it.
Yeah, I used clay, and so what I did was I made a wax form, and then I covered it in clay, put the clay in the other oven, and melted the wax out, and then flipped the clay around, filled it with concrete, and then washed the clay off, because I didn't heat the clay. I heated the clay enough to melt the wax out, but not enough to turn it into ceramics. And I'd like to do that a little more, maybe in the summer. So you have a pretty good focus. You're not going to burn a finger off or anything. You have good focus, like you're not going to like burn a finger off with the molten metal, or.
Oh, I've been soldering since I was like little.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of brazing and soldering, and even a little bit of welding.
Yeah.
Like
Nice.
especially HVAC, you braze a lot of. I was doing manufacturing for a little bit. I used to just like spend all day just brazing coils.
Nice.
Do you want to take a very brief break?
Sometimes like a little bit of the molten metal will like get on your skin, or will like get on your coveralls, and you're trying to like brush it away before it like goes down your pant leg.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I decided to go with concrete instead of molten metal, because, well, also my son who's 10 is kind of like bouncing around all the time. So if he bumps into me and I drop concrete on my shoe, I wash it off. But if I drop molten metal on my foot,
Yeah, because you're.
then I'm going to miss a rumble.
You looked at melting pennies, right? And you're looking at
I wanted to melt pennies because we just had some. And what I didn't realize is when you melt the pennies now, that the zinc ones, after a certain year, just like shoots out of the pennies.
Oh yeah.
So I was going to do some research before I started melting pennies, but it's funny when you're like, what could go wrong? I took a piano apart a few years ago.
what you're going up.
Just so happened that David Belcourt told me they were explosive. I was like, what? And I just started taking it apart, thinking, well, we'll see about that. And I got to the point where I was just about to cut the next wire, because the wires are under so much tension that they can shoot like a kilometer away. And I was cutting the wires, but they were shooting from where I was to the other side of the piano. So I cut like 3 wires, and I was like, I have a mask in the room. I might as well put the mask on. I put the mask on. Turned out the very next wire was wired there and back. So instead of clipping it and having the wire disappear in the other direction, it went in the other direction, came back and whacked me in the mask hard enough to knock me off my feet. And I was like, wow, that would have split my skull in half. Like, I seem to have that luck where I always stop and think right before I die.
Tuning pianos is not for the faint of heart, but I can't imagine just like cutting a string under pressure all like willy-nilly.
We had a piano, and it took 5 or 6 people to get it here. And I didn't want to call on those 5 or 6 people to get rid of it. So I just decided to chop it up and throw it in the truck. And Jess went to her parents' house, so I was kind of by myself. And I just started dismantling the piano, and it was really dangerous. stupid.
Just stay away from like the garage door. Like, man, those garage door springs, like, they're nuts. Like, I actually did combat robotics for a little bit, and I had this idea for a robot that actually it was literally just had like a really powerful spring that I would just like tension by hand and put in there,
Yeah.
and just make it like ridiculously powerful.
Yeah.
And then just have like a little solenoid or a little servo, just kind of like knock a little pin out and just like whack the thing. But I did a test like with some other folks, and it ended up like practically going through like a fairly thick piece of acrylic.
Oh, wow.
So we just decided to nix it.
Like rain it in.
Yeah, and even then, I don't even know if that's like legal.
Oh.
Like, it would have been some total like weird like airbuds, like, oh, dogs can't play basketball, like type like subversion of the rules. But
One really specific, no garage door spring.
Jesse, I'm waiting for you to sit so I can
Garage
adjust the
doors
camera.
Oh,
can't
sitting.
bow.
No, I'm just
Garage
I'm waiting for you
doors
to like
cannot
place
bow.
yourself so I can adjust the camera.
Unallowed.
A standing one, but I think
Guess that's just
You can do a standing one if you want.
This-
I just want to.
this paint.
Adjust the camera.
So there's charcoal.
So let me know when you're ready. That actually works quite well.
Yeah.
Are you gonna get a stiff neck?
no. Is 15 minutes good? And then whatever we're left with at the end.
Works for me.
It wasn't exactly a zoom. It was kind of zoom. I don't hate the clothed figure drawing. Like sometimes, given the right materials, it does make for interesting drawings.
I mean, it's nice having like drapery and fabric. Does kind of force you to think a bit more of the underlying structure, not just kind of chasing the contour.
I reduce everybody to their bones before I start, but I do
Talking to them.
I do that when I'm eating lunch too, dissecting the skin, and imagining them without their skin.
It'd be fun to do like a historical like reenactment, like a figure of like an anatomy or like figure drawing class. Have like although the cadaver might be hard to source. I'll let you know if I have any leads on that.
Listen, maybe we can give it like a Renaissance fair to help out.
Well, I was just saying, Jess and I can order cadavers as long as we're teachers. So
Well, what do you think they do with the loser of the joust competition? Your body's donated to
I
this.
thought we were talking modern day for a second, and I'm like, I love going to the whole high school joust competition.
Oh, yeah, go the Wildcats jousting team.
It's actually pretty daunting when you think about it. Like, you know, if you're playing basketball, or I used to wrestle, if I lost a match, I'd just get up and do it again. But if you're learning like sword fighting,
Yeah.
you know, and turns out you weren't that great of a samurai, the next thing you know, you're like hobbling around with like a stump.
Well, they don't start off with real blades.
Sure, but like the very first time you miss, you're now, you know,
Yeah, you can't have
One-armed.
like performance things. Like, you can't be a choker, otherwise you're literally going to be choking.
The samurai with imposter syndrome.
you'd have to be 100% accurate every single time, and you'd
Yeah.
have to win at 100. So there's a
I
book
don't
about
think James Harden would make a very good samurai.
right. There's a book about would it be possible for Batman to exist, and it was a kinesiologist that wrote it, and he spent, I don't know, 10, 15 years calculating the odds, and it came down to if you had kind of the setup of your typical NASA astronaut, where you might be a scientist and an Olympian with unlimited funds. I think he calculated it would take 18 years for Bruce Wayne to master all the sciences and martial arts, fighting tactics he'd need. But the disappointing part is he'd have a shelf life of about 3 years. That once he started fighting crime, as he accumulated injuries, it'd be a short-lived Batman career. So it's speculative, but they did think that it could be done. But
Plus, you need dead parents.
right,
The whole
If you're
Richard
British.
backstory.
right.
That's a bummer.
So if you want people with like a tragic backstory, just go to the Kindness Building. They got them in spades.
The what building?
Or the Kindness Center,
Pretty much, you'd find a lot of people like that at Rumble House. To tell you the truth, there's a lot of people with some struggles that come by. The temptation to glance over these two computer screens where you are still is high, and yet it's a different angle.
how much time do we have left on this pose?
8 minutes and 50 seconds.
Son of a bitch! I'm never in a rush. Sorry, that was a dumb joke. Do you refer to the Silver Surfer in your mind when you're doing metallic microphones? A couple images that stick in my mind whenever I'm doing metallic things in my drawings is the Silver Surfer and 1980s drawings that were always hubcaps in the California desert.
I don't know. I always end up thinking about like little jacks, like the middle sort of kind of like games where like you bounce a ball and try to pick all of them up.
Yeah.
Because for one of my projects in first year, it was like having to draw a chessboard where you put random objects on it.
Yep.
And I decided to be very mean to myself and I put a bunch of those on it.
Yeah.
And it had to be like photorealistic. So
Yeah. What year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Sorry?
What year was that?
That was first year.
No, what year was your first year?
Oh, that would have been in 2019.
Okay.
In that first semester. And it ended up being a really good drawing too.
Right.
I just ended up this is very stressful.
I went to school with a guy in his first year that decided to do wing nuts to the nth degree. And at first, it was irritating. Then it got a little funny. then it went back to irritating, and then he did reach a point where it became intriguing that he really stuck it out for long enough that it became relevant. But I think he flunked out as well. I remember my first 3 weeks of school. I think they were collecting tuition and then driving people out because we did 3 weeks of drawing white eggs on a white sheet day after day after day. And I think they were just testing to see if we were going to drop out.
Yeah. Seems like that's the case with a couple of those kinds of things. It's like, yeah.
I was so excited to drop out. I couldn't even wait till college. But I knew going into it, it's like if I could do the high school I needed to in like a few months, like I was gonna save myself a few years here.
Well, my son went for 2 weeks, maybe in 2019. And then he's like, this is not for me. And then now he's going to go to SAIT. And he might take.
It was during COVID because they weren't allowed.
Right, 2020?
Yeah, because the studios weren't functioning.
Right. And the idea of sort of having a career as a carpenter and taking night classes, 1 class a semester for the rest of your life seems pretty exciting. I kind of wish I did it that way sometimes.
But 5 minutes left.
Like being so you went to art school, right?
Several times.
Yeah. And you said you'd like just doing carpentry and then just doing like night school.
That's my son.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't explain that well.
Like half listening,
That's totally fair.
half drawing. Yeah. Now, the nice thing about like doing HVAC is that like job security is pretty great. Money's good. It's always in demand. Always somebody hiring, but it's just very demanding. Like it's like minimum. Like if you take a full-time position, it's like minimum like 50 to 60 hours a week. Like fairly mentally and physically strenuous work. I'm kind of left without my vehicle right now, so I'm just kind of taking my time getting back to it if ever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try my hand at engineering. Because like I love working on the equipment. Like fixing broken equipment is nice, but the company I ended up at, it was just like endless like preventative maintenance and whatnot. And it's like, okay, like I'm gonna be stuck changing filters for like 3 years before I actually like do anything interesting. So the thing that's nuts is that when they impound a car, they just don't tell you.
What was your car impounded for?
It was parked on street parking like more than like 2 days in a row.
Okay.
And I bought the car like 2 months prior, like went slightly into debt to get it. And then like 2 months later, like total transmission failure.
Mm. I ripped my bicep off working concrete, and I had rode my motorcycle to the job site, and I ended up in surgery that day and recovering for about a week. And after I got out of surgery, I realized I didn't really know anybody well enough to get my motorcycle out of the street that it was on. And luckily, I found a guy willing to pick up my keys and go get my bike because it had the 72-hour notice on it when he got there.
like when the transmission started failing,
Mhm.
like it started like having like a weird time going from like third to fourth gear, and then one day it just stopped reversing.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, it's the Lord's way of telling me to. There's no going back.
Reminds me of my Volkswagen microbus. It kind of didn't really have a sense for second or third gear, so you'd just basically get like in the ACAD parking lot, I'd have to just gun it at the ramps to get up the ramps, to rev it really high and pop the clutch. It's funny though. What kind of car was it?
It was so I bought it to replace my previous car
Mhm.
because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go to Cochrane for this job, and I need something that's like really reliable.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a 1996 Honda Civic,
Oh, okay.
and it was an upgrade from my 1992 Toyota Corolla. And the way I looked at it, I was like, man, this thing has survived more winters than me. Like I should be in good hands here. But
Yeah.
in the summer, it had like really bad cooling issues. Like I had, and like that thing stalled on me like 10 times. Mind you, I learned a lot about cars because it was like a mechanical pop quiz. Like every time oh yeah. No, one time I was like stranded with a friend and we called AAA and they were like, oh yeah, it's going to be like 10 hours or whatever. And we were like going through the manual and like going through the fuse box and, thinking about what it was. And we found one burnt out fuse, but that wasn't it. But then I found like the last burnt out, like the other burnt out fuse after like a few hours of waiting. We were like jumping up and down. We were ecstatic. Like,
Yeah. Jess was driving the truck and she said, I got a bad feeling about this. And my dad mentioned it once. I think I kind of know what to do. I just need to tighten the screw before it falls out. And then we got in the truck and it wouldn't start. She's like, I think the screw fell out. And so, first of all, she starts digging around the bottom of the truck. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way you're going to find that screw on that floor. She finds the screw. She's like, I think this is the screw. I'm like, there's no way that's the screw that you think is going to fall out. And then, so she had no idea where it fell out from. It was just a story that her dad had told her years ago. And then she got on the car. She was like, I think it goes here. There was a couple spots we thought that screw might have gone. And it wasn't evident where it needed to go. It was just this one random screw that made the whole truck work. And she YouTubed it. We fixed it.
Okay. 10 minutes last post.
next time I get a vehicle, I'm getting like something that has like carrying capacity. I aspire to be a bachelor with a minivan.
We had a Winnebago for a little while. All we did was move it from one place to the other, and then we sold it. I think the guy that gave it to me was a bank robber.
Good story there.
He'd gone to prison for bank robbery, and he was
That's a great story.
No, but he no. There's more to it. He was often sort of talking with us about his struggles. I hope he's not online. And he came in when he was homeless, and I'd said to the crowd, whatever he sells this piece for, we're going to let him keep it all. And he ended up making enough money off that piece that he was able to stay in a hotel the first night. Came back the next week and did the same thing. Was able to stay in a hotel. No, he was able to stay in a hostel the first night and a hotel the next week. While he was in the hotel, he was telling somebody about his troubles who gave him a Winnebago to live in. So when he got back on his feet, he wanted to give me a Winnebago. And I was like, I don't really have a place for a Winnebago. He got really worked up about giving me a Winnebago. It was like a vintage kind of Austin Powers 1960s, perfectly restored Winnebago with like a round bed and lights. Like it was it was insane. I was like, you could probably sell this for enough to really secure your stability. Please sell this. So he sold it. And then he ended up feeling guilty about selling it. So he found a second Winnebago that he wanted to sell to us. So he invested in the second Winnebago. I didn't really care either way. Basically, like when he was in trouble, I would give him whatever spare money I had to keep him from relapsing. Because in terms of addictions, I guess just walking into a bank and saying, give me all the money can be quite thrilling. I really hope he's not online right now, but I haven't used his name at all, right? No. So he gave us this Winnebago. Well, and I ended up insisting on buying it, so we gave him a fair price for it. And whatever, we insured it, and nothing bad happened. But a couple times he kind of came by and expressed this stress he was having, that he could feel the world piling up against him, and didn't want to get sucked into old bad habits. So he kind of told me the details about how he robbed banks back when he used to rob banks. And that was kind of like water under the bridge. So kind of a funny, like sitting around like, oh, how did you end up doing that after all? But then I missed him a few times when he was trying to contact me when he was having some of those tough troubles, and felt bad about missing him, but I figured he was doing okay. And then during work, and I was listening to CBC, and they were describing an area where I know he used to frequent, and the details of the bank robbery were pretty consistent with his explanation of how he did things. And they also included a photo that came from the security cameras. Now, knowing that he'd been to jail for bank robbery, I was not going to phone the police and suggest he was a suspect, because the photos from the bank robbery were close enough to what he looked like that it wouldn't matter if he did it or not. He was just going to go back into jail for looking like whoever robbed that bank. But I did have some anxiety about the situation.
Understandable.
And at one point we were debating something, and it was completely unrelated, but I think I got him in a bad mood. And so I ended up talking to him on Facebook to make sure that he's feeling okay. And then I realized not only did he have the same hat and sunglasses on in his Facebook poster as the picture from the bank robbery, but there was a number of other things kind of piled up. And I didn't want to let him know that I knew in any ways, because unless he's listening right now, he had no idea that I knew. But in a moment of like kind of wanting to be left alone late at night, I said something, a PS, change your Facebook photo, in relation to, I can't remember how I referenced the situation, but it was pretty funny, and then kind of deleted me. Because unless he was that bank robber, he'd have no idea what I was talking about. And it's a well-crafted hint. But strangely enough, he's still pretty friendly and kind of supportive.
That's good.
I think I blocked him because I didn't want to hear the Trump rhetoric that he sent you.
Yeah.
Who?
Trump. He was
I think he was like a treasurer or some sort of position. I think he was like the South Dakota comptroller.
Interesting.
actually early on in that situation. Unfriended somebody because I didn't want to be overexposed to his philosophies. And he got really upset with me because I unfriended him. He's like, no, I don't feel like I can go to figure drawing. And I was like, I'm not breaking up with you as a friend, and you're not banned from the gallery.
I'm being impressed.
No, that was like early days of the Trump fragility. Maybe that was the first time I heard it.
A lot of orange snowflakes up there too. On both sides.
I put like super duper like hardcore internet blockers on like my phone and my computer, and it's literally there's like 3 hours a day where I have like unfettered access to the internet. Because like my brain, it's kind of like a Labrador Retriever sometimes, you know.
I
like-
really liked how that sounded for a second because I thought you found a way to block like the kind of rhetoric you didn't want to hear. What
That
you're
would
telling
be
me is
awesome.
Oh no, it's either like here's the thing, by like inherently like looking at anything that's like an algorithmic feed,
Mhm.
it's literally engineered for engagement,
Mhm.
and people are hardwired to respond to negative things far more emotionally than like positive things, because it makes sense like evolutionarily and like survivally speaking.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's pretty much like regardless of like where your bias is, it'll just, you know, show you stuff, and even if you're not the one that's like outraged, it'll show you people getting outraged at this thing that you don't think is worth being outraged over, and then you get outraged over the outrage. It's yeah, no, and like listen, I being distracted and neurotic, like I got that like down pat. Like I don't need any aids. And it's just
Yeah, right. But if I can like wonder about plates and have plate ads show up, and that's the scary part is I don't want to be conspiracy theory, but I really do feel like sometimes I'm not even saying these things out loud, and they're ending up in my feed. Why can't I program in like stuff that I don't want to be exposed to? Because that'd be great. That'd be a great feature. Like,
Maybe that's where AI
right?
well, actually, there's one thing that they're doing is that there's this push to actually like make social media platforms like kind of ban them from news, and if you want news, you have to actually go to like a news establishment, or like an actual like forum intended for news, which makes a lot of sense because you know I just want to like look at like cool things. Or like another trick that I've heard from some people is only follow stuff that's in a language that you don't understand. So you just scroll. Oh, nice picture of art. Oh, look at this nice itinerary.
I actually don't really have too much trouble with being sucked into those things, and actually, I don't particularly worry about because generally, you know, when I'm being invaded upon, it seems to be stuff I don't mind. Like they predicted that I want this new Blue Note album. I'm like actually grateful that they know who I am. You know,
Yeah. For music, it's great.
right?
That's what I love about it.
I made use of AI with a discussion with my land person. And basically, what happened is we get these kind of unpleasant messages on the door. And so I took the intent, which was, hey, we're going to enter your apartment for safety reasons. And I typed that out, and I had my sample letter of how they could interact with us. And then I write the same letter in a really unpleasant voice. And I got almost the identical letter that we find on our door. And so when I shared this with the land person, I was like, look at like to get the AI to write in a voice as negative as yours, I have to specifically request to be mistreated. And they actually found that kind of intriguing, right? Like, I don't think people intend to be hurtful. It just comes out because they're in a rush. Or maybe they've let their frustrations come through, but they could actually have a better experience with their people that live in their building. So I did three things. I took the two reasons they were contacting us, and I had them write a sample letter, and then asked them to write me a nasty sample letter. I think in that context, nobody wants to see that they're nasty. Without being called nasty, I was just like, look it, I asked the computer to write a nasty letter, and this is what they came up with. And then I actually asked the AI to write my landlord a letter saying that it's not that I'm opposed to following their directions. It's just that sometimes they make my wife cry. And it wrote me that letter, and then I also asked it to explain how they could use AI to improve communications between their tenants and the front office. But I would say that was the closest I've ever come to winning an argument with them.
Yeah, there you go.
Now that there's a little bit more time till next Thursday, should I book a model for next Thursday?
I think so.
That'd be great.
Awesome.
How much is the
Yeah, that's what we were talking
the
about.
model fees have changed? I think a little.
We want to pay a little bit more inflation. So
We can talk to the models
so we can
and
talk to
ask
the
them.
models too, and then how about like we're not worried about the fee. People worried about and we can figure out like we're talking about like
Was $20 drop in fair? Is it a comfortable fee?
Yeah.
You guys?
So,
Okay, let's do that. I can always adjust.
And we'll
for
come up
me,
with.
it's worth it.
I do think that the $10 drop in fee made figure drawing very accessible previously, but
That's
a
all
lot
it
of
is.
people want. Hi.
Oh, sorry, we just kind of wandered in. Oh, nice. No wonder.
Term looks is fine. Maybe
We
Come on.
years
have
ago.
you been in before?
Nope.
No, fun.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Do you live nearby?
I do, not too far away.
I know your face from somewhere.
Really?
Yeah, what's your name?
Laura.
And what do you do?
I am a nurse who's not working right now
Where were you a nurse?
at Rocky View.
Do you mind if I ask how old you are? I'm 50. Are you close to my age?
Yeah.
Yeah, where did you go to school?
I graduated from like Wisewood, but then I went in. Sorry, I had a bit of a brain injury, so my recall is
That's
not
okay.
so great.
But I grew
so
up
like,
in Candy Meadows. In
oh yeah.
yeah, I bet you I recognize your face just from the block. Did you graduate sort of?
I wonder.
What year did you graduate high school?
86.
Okay, so we grew up together. That's why I know your face.
Oh
Yeah.
my god!
You just
really?
meander in and just like,
No
oh.
way.
So you went to
No
Wisewood.
fucking way.
What junior high? Well, I mean, like just in the same area. Like you probably
What?
took the
But
number
no, I was
3.
mainly in the. I was in the Southwest, so like Wisewood, and then. But I mean, before that, I was in. There was Varsity Acres, and then.
I never forget a face, and it's upsetting to people sometimes because I might have just passed
That's
into
cool.
shopping mall.
What's your name?
My name's Rich Teru.
Rich
Teru. And I went to Bishop Grandin, but I grew up in the southwest of Calgary, and I think we're pretty close to the same age.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, like I'm older than you though. So you said you're how old?
I'm 51.
So I'm 54.
Right. But I mean, when you were in high school, I was in high school at the same time.
Yeah.
And those two schools were nearby. And
Although he got kicked.
Totally. Well,
I
mean, that
actually
can
didn't
happen.
get kicked out, but I did get the shop diploma.
Wow, that is so beautiful.
Thank you.
We Wednesday nights we have live art
Gorgeous.
events and we have auctions, and then we're just starting.
Oh,
We always had figure drawing before on Thursday night, but we're just trying to start it up again. So next Thursday we'll have a model again too, and we'll
that's amazing.
yeah.
Do you draw it
Beautiful.
yourself?
Would you like one?
What do you mean? Would I like?
I got 3.
Oh my goodness! Really? You've done all those tonight?
Yeah, actually, wouldn't mind keeping this one and the yellow one.
That
If
is
you'd like
so
either of those
beautiful.
first 2, you're welcome to take them.
Wow. Sorry. And it's Rich.
Rich, yeah.
Rich. Jessica. Oh, what a lovely, what a lovely thing to wander in here, you guys.
Do you live nearby?
Not too far, just up on 12th Ave.
Okay. Jess and I live in the Continental,
Oh wow.
and we've been doing this almost here. This is a gift. I don't know if you can carry it where you're going.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. I totally can carry it. That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Is it all right if I just like?
Yeah,
stand
make
here?
yourself comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you
so much.
Yeah, on
Are you just
Wednesdays.
doing figure drawing?
Oh, actually, like, I'd love to actually, but I don't, you know, it's not something that I've done before. It's certainly something I've thought about long.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to come because we both teach, and if you're ever curious about stuff, like, you're more than welcome to come.
Oh.
And they have the big live art thing on. He can explain it.
Yeah,
on
Wednesday
It's
night,
just the
You said
huge
it's a live art. Yeah, I saw the sign in the window. Yeah, I didn't.
Thing.
So
I
everyone's
was just like,
welcome.
I'm just gonna try the door. See what happens.
That's like our threshold. Once
If you're
we walk in,
curious
we become
enough,
part
yeah.
of the family, right? So.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Wow, whatever. That's amazing.
It's very nice.
So we got all these chairs. I think they were donated from a church, and they used to be this weird puce color.
Yeah, yeah.
And we also have a lot of fabric around. So one day I just randomly started reupholstering the chairs, and Jess is like, "That's
Oh,
gonna
that's
take
what
forever."
we're saying.
Yeah. And then she got so mad that I wanted to do that, and then she got so excited about it, so it worked out.
They're actually not that hard to do. I mean, I've reupholstered chairs before, and it's like it's so easy to just make something so different quickly. Are you Rich? Have you been have you studied?
Yeah, I think everybody here has gone to school, and then Jess and I are both teachers. These young men, I think you guys are just finishing school. Is that correct?
I've just graduated.
Just graduated,
And you
and
go to
what's your
you go to
status?
APAD, or-
My status?
Yeah.
I have a cat.
That's a school in and of itself.
Day to day, that's about it. That's it, man. It's all in this.
Did you ever like try and
I
place
used
yourself
to
on
teach.
that emerging artist chart, whether you're established or there's a chart for success, and sort of goes from not
I can't even think about that stuff anymore.
hobbyist to
Yeah.
emerging artist to there's a list of criteria like, oh, if you had a show in
I'm a failed artist. That's
Yeah,
what I
it's
Well, I
say.
mean, what do you think about that? I mean, these criteria. Well, I mean, just the
we
idea of
invented this
criteria.
space so that we wouldn't have to deal with any of that.
Yeah, totally.
We
I
usurp
used
the
to get
system.
caught up with a lot of that stuff, but now I just draw.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. I have to. That's what I think about most of the time, and but I don't. It's not a career for me or anything. But for some people, for a lot of people, it is. But that can kind of suck the life out of it too. Right?
No one's really ever made a living as an artist. Like Picasso consumed 4 or 5 heiresses and just ate their wealth. And
Sorry, what did you say? What did what?
Picasso, he would marry a wealthy heiress and
Yes.
use up all
Oh.
her wealth.
Right.
By
Wow.
surrounding yourself by millionaires, you can sell your pieces in the thousands. By surrounding yourself by thousandaires, you can sell your pieces in the hundreds. By if your friends have $10 in their pocket, they'll give you $1 for your painting. If they've got $100 in their pocket, they might give you $10 for a painting. Here's a pretty interesting metric. How much was your couch?
My couch.
Yeah,
It's a nice one. So
how
I
much?
think it was like
$5,000? 500?
that nice. Jeez.
500?
No, more like 2 grand.
$2,000? And you don't have a problem spending $200 on a painting. You don't have a problem spending $200 on.
Not if it's an artist that I am
Right. But you probably do you have a lot of $2,000 paintings.
What?
Do you have a lot of $2,000 paintings?
No.
I would say quite consistently, everyone I've ever met will put 1 0 on their couch for whatever they spend on a painting. So if you have a $200 couch, you're buying $20 paintings. If you have a $2,000 couch, you're buying $200
Oh, I like
paintings.
this.
If you're buying $50,000, and you know the fight cry for artists is like, oh, I painted this painting, but he wanted me to match it to his couch. It's like, well, his couch is worth 10 times more than your painting because he sits on that couch and he lives in that couch. And there's a reason why that painting needs to match the couch is that he's not going to replace that couch to match the painting. And neither would I. I mean, I probably would. I'm in a rarity that I run this space, so I don't have the same metric as everybody else. But
So like the space is pretty cool. Like is it somebody like Or like, what's the space? Like, how is it that it can be this way?
It's just in the ether. Jess and I are school teachers.
What?
Do you still live above?
No, we live in
We
Continental
just
down the
live
block.
Yeah, we just live down the street.
We're both school teachers,
Ideally,
and
it'd be
we
cool if
break even
Oh, I
here.
thought you were-
So
That would be really cool.
you were saying about being a professional artist. I've sold about 1,000 paintings here to keep the space open.
Wow.
I've never collected a penny out of the space. Jess and I work here for free, and I make about
Oh yeah.
a semi-professional salary as an artist that supports the space. So,
Is that good?
I basically earn enough to pay the rent here with my art, which is actually I'm quite proud of.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So like what kind of art do you do?
What are my pieces?
There's a
That-
big one
there's
there.
a big
self-portrait
self-portrait right there.
That is really
I love
The-
that.
bold.
The one right here?
I-
You must have just been slinging some paint that day.
I was working
one right
on a horse for a
Wow.
client that
Oh my-
wanted
oh
a
my
specific
God.
horse. And over and over and over, they asked for changes and changes and changes. So it was like the rubber band and pull all the way back.
Mm.
And then I just needed a break, and I whipped that out, and I just banged it off in
Wow.
15 minutes. And I can't paint that well.
Really?
I can't paint that well at all.
Oh.
There's no. Did
Yeah.
I sketch it? I might have sketched it.
I mean,
Did I sketch it in with charcoal?
Oh yes.
I smacked it in white, I smacked on some blue, and I smacked on some black, and I don't think I even waited for
Thanks
this.
for coming to.
Literally just happened.
Yeah. Well, thank you for.
yeah.
It's funny that you just mentioned that you were kind of on
But I can't do it. I can't paint
Yeah,
it.
no, it's
That was
funny.
like-
It's like literally
that was-
earlier
that
this week.
was
I'm like, man, I'm really itching to do some figure drawing. I haven't done it in forever.
So like,
And then it's like,
Yeah, and I have gone through
What's that?
I just love that you just like had this
In the
urge
zone,
and then
feeling
like
that you
take
wanted
these ideas out because like we're
It
doing
came
figure
from a
drawing with our
photo.
classes, and,
Do you know, like,
and we're like talking about it a lot. We're like,
you've
I
had
think
a
we're so
long
much to do
day.
Thursday. I'm like, yeah.
you did everything right,
It
you
worked
sat
out.
down, and you just rested.
So yeah, I'll get a model.
My hair was plastered back with sweat, and I take it off.
oh, yeah. Oh, and I don't know if you were
Okay.
there for that conversation.
I'll hang around too.
I
Yeah.
I'm like a 7-minute bike ride away, and you know,
No, we would.
No, that's okay. I
give
just
me
moving
some
back
like
this way.
figure drawing.
I am
This
trying to
is
place where I know
such a
your
slight
face from.
design.
I'll be willing to donate my
This is the
body,
first time
my
that they've run it
my patience.
Since COVID.
since
Oh, I
COVID.
yeah.
So,
For my
it's eager to kind
Oh
of
sure.
come out and I even took a cab here. I'm not that far away. I was
Jess,
like,
could you
I guess if I were to
open one of my boxes?
Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
talking to you.
well, I did all right. I did better than I thought. You know, after 3 years.
5 of us.
We're all right.
Abandonment. 3 years of abandonment.
You know, this one I kind of worked on this one a little bit. I thought she looked a little bit like she maybe had a. So, I didn't even want to too well, but yeah, that was a lot of fun. She's
Here, it's like a-
she did a great job.
Wow.
That's a book about how we
Here's
got
my
our
first
last
name and my
gallery,
phone
and
number.
the
I
last
don't
page
know.
That's
basically
perfect.
starts when we opened this.
That is terrific. That's me.
You should be one actually.
Oh,
I end up having like so many because of this space.
Looks great.
The
Oh,
e-transfer is really great.
Like
Like
capturing that.
But we're not
Yes.
charging tonight.
No, I keep.
Oh,
I have
I'm
his
sorry.
contact so then I can like
Oh,
message
yeah,
him.
yeah.
But I
That
was
was
like,
probably
I'm just gonna
like
put figure drawing.
That's amazing. Like how.
Lay down my
Yeah,
body
I'm
for
really
the
out of
sake of art.
practice, but
That's wonderful.
that one I kind of spent like a little bit more time on. And then that one, it's alright.
Hey, cool.
It's okay.
Yeah. I'm like
Are we done?
This was a really nice night.
Oh, it's over.
It's 20 after 9.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm just thinking about like that Picasso thing with like the spinstress.
Yeah, I
like,
love John. I love John.
Whatever it
Oh,
was.
the heiress,
Yeah,
yeah.
the heiress. Yeah.
It was 2 or 3. it really comes down to surrounding yourself with people that have money and they'd be happy to spend their pocket change on your brain.
That's why I part of the reason why I bought a suit for my birthday
Yeah.
was because it's like, okay, like
Yeah, that's what
I had like a budget. I was like, okay, I've never had like decent clothes before. And I had that HVAC money.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, I'm just gonna buy like a suit, like a nice sweater.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
I mean,
had a
I
buddy
was-
that used to work at
That's
Nordstrom,
kind of,
and he was like giving me
and
like
we
all the
like we were
deals. He
talking
knew
about
like
the
exactly
top
like all the
too,
fit,
like,
like all the
Yeah.
the,
yeah. And
you
it's
know,
actually coming in handy
colonial
a few
one
times.
because of the way the light hit it.
Oh yeah.
So you got some really
Stuff.
nice
I probably shouldn't have been sitting in on.
graphic.
I bought
kind
my
of
first suit about 2 years ago.
triangles and things
Yes.
like that, planes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
I had a cheap
Yeah.
suit
So,
before I
you
bought
know,
my
it's-
first kind of decent
So
suit.
it was pretty
And then
pretty good 'cause
one of my students
John
really loves fabrics
clothes
and
is a lot more
fashion.
than-
And so I just asked her
Yes.
one day, because
Yes.
we were in the
Well,
look
we're all
catalog,
Yeah.
and I was like, hey, take a look at my suit and tell me if you can tell which is my cheap
but,
suit. And she's like, oh, this one. I'm like, you're exactly right. It's like, and so I was trying to learn about what made a cheap
too
suit.
busy.
And like, it's
Yes, that's very
Right.
different.
I remember
Something
once
like
I had
the
a
details
model
into what
and it
makes
was
a
the
nice
busiest
suit
dress
and
ever.
all those
There
things.
were all
Yeah.
these
Well, the way my my friend
flowers,
actually,
and it
I've
looked
known
lovely,
him.
but
I've
there
been
was
like
just
I've
no
known him since I was like
way.
16.
Because then
Yeah.
it obscures
He
the
was-
contour.
He taught me how to
Yes.
roll a
And
joint.
so-
When I was like 30. You know?
Yeah.
But
So
anyways, he just
this
got like
was a
really
really nice,
into like men's
nice
fashion, like
choice, and
GQ
I
type
really
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was like a big shock from him because he was
Yeah.
always like baggy pants,
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
Going
hat, like
I think so
Tupac
too.
shirt.
I
Yeah.
haven't-
You know,
I haven't
but
actually-
yeah, no, a lot of it
That's when
is
I
like
think of,
like the
my-
fit is
Yeah.
a big thing,
kind of
Yeah.
think of,
and then like the
kind
actual
of
cut
but
of the suit,
Yeah.
and then
It's like
the
Well,
actual
that's
like
no,
to capture it
material
all,
and like the
it's
color
pretty amazing.
is
Mhm.
actually
When I
kind of
think
like
that,
far
it
down
makes me
on
think
the
of
list. Like the fit.
Well,
that. The sculptors.
I had another
How they used to
completely
do it.
other extreme where
Amazing.
I bought a $300 suit about 10 years ago,
Oh yeah. It's okay.
and they ended up with a $500.
I was like, I was like,
the
the
tie
Italian
pin.
sculptors, like,
And my boss
I don't
came
know.
up to me one day when I was wearing the tie pin. He's like, "Hey, well, we're in the same suit." I'm like, "No, we're not." He's like, "Yeah, you're wearing a Brooks Brothers shirt." I'm like, "No, we're not. I'm wearing a Brooks Brothers tie pin with a $300 Express suit." My last suit was a little more,
subtracting things.
fancy. But it didn't occur to me that if I was going to those fancy events, people might be looking at my stitching. You know, like that kind of stressed me out as well. Like,
I mean, you should confidence to do that.
And try drawing or come to the Wednesday.
do you want my 5-minute drawing lesson?
Oh,
Is
sure.
it the tree?
Totally. Sure.
Is it the tree? Because
Sure, I would
I
love-
used
I
the
would love
tree.
it.
You
I would love it.
you
Yeah.
put how to draw a tree like I don't know 5-6 years ago. I was
Yeah.
like, and I never draw trees or anything. And I was like, and it works. It works.
Oh,
So
yeah,
he's
of
got
course.
what's your name? Mike.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, I'm excited to draw.
Hey, Jack,
La-
are you up
Lara.
to just heading home?
Lara.
I'll probably be heading home for the night, but I'm good for for a little bit.
Right on. Yeah, I'll tag along.
Heck yeah, that sounds good.
No.
Your work's
Yeah,
phenomenal,
from-
by the way. I was really impressed.
Michael, yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I'm glad you came in.
So $20 next time, is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back.
That's a lot of fun.
I thought you were gonna stress out. I've been avoiding this because I didn't want to
It
worry
was
out.
really fun.
Yeah, it's good.
It was
Good for the
so
soul.
nice. Yeah, it was so nice.
Next, we do have 2 viewers with us. Next week, we will not be broadcasting on camera.
I
So
have-
this is just a
Yeah, I almost got. Oh, sorry, I got. I found out Sunday that like.
I'll let you know when I start
that
writing
was
my
gonna be,
course.
like,
You can come and pitch
displaced
some
from
ideas to the.
Oh my God.
It'll be a communal thing that nobody owns.
Totally, like,
This
it was
idea.
totally
Oh, the sensory?
The anthropological,
I start freaking
the neuroscience, and then color mixing. It came from. It's not a big deal anymore, but about
help me or anything like that. Don't even know.
10 years ago, I happened along making blue out of purple and green. I thought it was an anomaly. And then about 5 years after that, I was teaching. I usually skip color theory because it feels wrong to explain to my kids that something's different in art than it is in bio.
I actually
Right.
only.
But I decided to tackle the color wheel one year. I said, okay, the color wheel's boring. Show me what you got. And all the kids came up with their different color wheels, but most of them came at it through a
It's
CMYK,
like
which I had a
you're
print
giving-
experience
you're
and a
giving-
painting
you're
experience
giving, like,
and actually a digital projection
till,
experience. So,
like the end of August.
When I started cross-referencing, I started thinking to myself, why
That's not
would?
enough time.
So I went down to the
And-
biology
and,
teacher and I was
so
like, hey,
I
can we
offered
just
to
talk
pay
about
more
bones for a second?
inside of it.
She
So
freaked
I
out. She's like, I know it's
so I got 10 months to
red, blue, yellow in
to
art, but it's
look
different in
and
science.
make
And she
choice.
like backed away
So
from me
you
like I
like
was gonna
do
start
more
screaming at her, right?
exercises.
And it was like, no, I'm actually open to discussing this. So I did some thinking and I worked out it in my head. I was at wrestling practice a couple days later and I was like, I'm gonna mix orange and green and make yellow.
I want to say what I paid out.
And
I'll
I
say that
told
made
Jess
them
that I was going to
in
do this, and I
the
mixed orange and green. I got this kind of muck color, and that's where I should have given up because the last 500 years of art lessons told me that that's what
For
I get.
me,
Then I
it's
watered
terrific
it, and it
because
turned
I
into
was
this
just
banana yellow. And
I
I was like,
like,
Yeah,
I
and
just
so
imagine like my heart rate
an hour
going
later,
up,
Jess
I'm
calls me
running
because I
around
pick her up from school. She's like, you didn't
trying
just
to
spend
get
an hour
viewings,
because I told her in advance. I said,
competing
I'm going
with
to
other
stick here and I'm going to see
people
if I can mix
and-
yellow because
and not having
I can mix
anybody
blue
to,
a couple different ways.
bounce
and,
ideas off of or anything.
It just
Like, you
came
make
to
a
me
lot
while I
of
was coaching
choices
wrestling
and-
how to mix yellow.
Yeah, it's true.
And she's like,
Yeah.
did you just spend an
Could
hour
end up in
mixing
a
yellow? I'm
bad
like, I
mood,
spent
but I wouldn't
10
even
minutes
know.
mixing yellow and
Unless I
50
did
minutes
enough
thinking I don't know who I am
research,
anymore.
which takes time.
And the next day I mixed red. So
Did you feel better
yellow
about
is
that?
like this
I
green
do.
and,
I mean,
and bright
I
orange
made
and
the right
tangerine.
decision
Just
because I'm
the bright
tall,
orange and,
just-
and a lime green will make yellow, and magenta and
Excuse my language.
cyan will make
and
a nice blue.
so
And
yeah, I mean
once you do it that way,
that's fine. And
orange,
and,
green, red and blue
around April next
don't
year,
have secondary
like,
colors.
I'll find
All
like
of your
a,
colors can go back
I'll
and
find a
forth.
good place to redeem the cash.
So there isn't
and,
because with red, yellow, blue,
um,
you can't take purple
I
and
would
orange
move
and
out
make red.
anyway though.
Right. With
Like,
cyan, magenta, and
I
yellow,
would-
where your secondary
would-
colors become
I'm gonna
red,
move
green,
out
blue.
for sure. Even
Which
if
is the
they're
same
like-
as the
like,
TV.
It's not worth what I'm paying.
it's the same as opposite of a
And
printer.
I don't like the
And
fact
it's only because artists are so
he
stubborn
literally
that
wrote
we
an
got stuck
email
on this red, yellow, blue, and,
that,
and that's why
like,
the
3
bio
weeks
teacher
ago
started
that
like
it was fine,
moving
that it
away
was
from me when I
assigned
spoke to her
this
because she'd
review,
gotten into this conversation with an art teacher before who flipped out that they're.
and then some time.
So I was at a party and I mentioned to one of Alberta's best painters that I could do
I'm
this, and
Like
actually
I have
did. I
to be
mentioned to
it's
Mark,
so
and he
hard.
was
I had to
nearby. He
call,
got so
like,
upset he was throwing
people, even
paint
like,
tubes at me, saying, "I'll bet you $117,000 you can't
First
make
thing
yellow." I
is,
was like, I'm not going to make this.
I
guy
don't
because
want to get mad
he
at
won't
this
pay.
guy. Right?
Second of
Like,
all, I already
mad
know
at
the
this guy.
outcome. And
Right,
Um,
of course, yeah. There's
I
that
get it.
power.
So
yeah,
Right,
I've upset
so
so
it's
many
like,
people, and
gotta
now I
be
think it's even now it's
professional
less
and
common for
pleasant,
people to be
boy,
stuck
I
to
really
this
wish that I
dogma.
could
But
tell.
you know, I'd say like, oh, I
Shitty
mixed
thing
yellow
is
and
to be-
orange.
I've lived there for
No, I said I
3 years.
mixed
It's my
orange
home.
and green to make yellow. People are like, there's already a lot of yellow in that green. I'm like,
You don't
Oh,
wanna
right,
ask
like, that's
something
what I'm
I've
saying,
been saying
but
for
yeah,
3
there's
years
this
now,
lock,
and
you know,
my
and
mom
there's
decided to
the
sell
same
place.
arguments that I
Yeah,
got
that's what
from
I got.
this one
Yeah,
particular
condo,
artist.
you
I
wanna
got
sell
from a
it.
guy
Yeah,
at an art store, and I got
yeah,
from a grade 11 girl.
Yeah,
It's just
so
like
now I
nobody's
am
mon-
going through
even
the-
Jess, for the first few
actually
weeks,
helping him to,
I was like, I'm kind of like a
fix it
little
up a
frustrated
little
that you're
bit,
not
but
more
I'm doing
excited
his
about
thing,
this.
but,
She's
you
like,
know,
my brain is not
I mean,
ready for
the thing
this.
is, like,
And
it's
Mark
like
was
I
the same
on
way. He's
a
like,
month,
I
and
see it, but
the
I'm
month
not.
is actually pretty-
You know, if the
So, yeah,
ceiling split
because
open and an
we
escalator
went
came
back
down,
to
a lizard hopped off
Yeah.
and said he was
Yeah.
Jesus, it'd be a lot to take in, right?
For me,
Yeah.
When I mixed yellow out of orange
uh,
and green,
agreed that,
it was
you know,
like
have the place
the
until-
ground split open and everything that I held true just disappeared. That was one of the most simplest, most basic lessons, right?
Before that,
Yeah.
you know, before
I
that
didn't
time.
tell this to my
Well,
10-year-old son, but he listens enough that he was in the back and he mixed magenta and yellow Sharpies to make red.
I'm actually, it was thinking,
He
like,
mentioned
I
to
would-
his art teacher that he
just
could make
looking
red.
around
She's
at
like, you
what
can't, it's a
is
primary color.
available,
This is
I
3
would-
years ago
if
and
I
she
could
hasn't let
find
him
a
show
place
him.
where-
Like, can you
Yeah.
imagine being an art
Nothing
teacher
on my
reluctant to learn from a 10-year-old that he knows how
Like,
to
I
make
could find
red?
a place where
Yeah.
I could,
Oh yeah,
you know,
I had an argument with an art teacher in high school about that
Yeah.
because we were doing like
it just
single
seemed
tone
to
paintings.
try
Yeah.
And instead of like
to
picking like
so much.
one color and then adding black and white
You know,
Yeah.
I just
to
felt
kind
like
of
it
like
was
lighten it
different.
and darken it,
Yeah.
I picked one color
Yeah.
But,
and I picked the opposite color
Yeah.
to darken it, so
Yeah.
it would be like a rich
Yeah.
kind of darker color, not just like muddy black.
Right.
And then she got very upset with me. But it looked nice, but she was just not.
That's just a lack of
Not pleased.
skill on that art teachers.
And part of
Pandemic
that
and
is
all
that-
that
You know, like
stuff,
if you have
I was
lots of tools in your toolbox, you
Yeah,
let the
'cause
kids build a motorcycle.
I'm built
If
like
if you only know how to work on a
There's
scooter,
an airborne.
you don't want them working on anything
thing?
but a scooter.
No,
That's where that
that's
defensive
It's too scary for
defensiveness comes
me.
from.
And,
But it's the same for that one teacher that's
yeah,
refusing
this is
to.
like, one
And
of
he
the
did
first
show
things
her,
I've been out.
but then she started saying, "Well, that's not red enough." I was like, "Fuck off."
I mean, I went to the Calgary.
And then I got the same thing, like, oh, it's not dark enough, and then I would like show like
little.
like I would mix it one ratio and another, and I mix them together, it would be black, like pretty much.
Yeah, if I could,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could help. It.
Green and red.
And then other teachers don't allow you to use
Yeah,
what
people
you
do.
should be using
I
that
don't do-
technique.
I
And
don't
it's just
do
like
that.
everybody just has, like you said, their own
Their own
safety
limitations.
Yeah.
and their own like
I got
what they
because
want to avoid over other people, which is so silly.
But it's like, and it's
wouldn't be so.
as long,
I do.
and it's like when you don't have like your own heuristics,
so
and you're
if
just
you
trying
send me
to
happy
figure out
faces
like
every day,
what the
it
hell
comes
to
up like-
believe.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
And it's a little
Um,
bit why people
oh,
get
yeah.
like really amused about
Oh,
music
yeah,
theory
I
as
just
well,
realized that,
and
my
like
phone
hold up kind of
That's okay.
Oh my
Western
God, that was just
standards
down
of
the
music
street.
theory is like the thing
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
which
if you-
everything else is kind of
you hear
judged
anything,
by.
I'm just
But
wondering
like
about,